addressing the body of the question also, use the advantage, disadvantage, merit, demerit, and break the question into as many parts as possible. It helps the examiner in cognizing that you have understood the question, that you know the answer in all its manifestations. Basic characteristics which are needed in answer writing is cohesiveness, preciseness, exactness, and orientation of the answer. Hello friends, I am DIVYA MISHRA. I have secured rank 28 in Civil Service Examination 2020, and this was my third attempt. In my first attempt, I have cleared prelims, mains, and I have appeared in the interview, but I missed the final list by 4 marks. And in my second attempt, which was last year, I secured rank 312 and I joined the Indian Railway Traffic Services, and this year it is 28. So I want to share some mains preparation strategy and tips with you today. So let us begin with that. So first, because this is the basic confusion which comes to mind of any civil service aspirant, that what are the standard sources that we should refer to. For this, I have referred to very simple sources which are known to everyone, but for the sake of clarity, I would explain here that in all these subjects, our NCERTs should be the beginning material. Then in history, we can move up to spectrum. In geography, Go Cheng Leong. In polity, we have Lakshmikant. In economics, besides the NCERTs, we should follow some particular newspapers, and there are other referral books also that can be covered within that. And within economics also, we have in that section agriculture, fiscal, monetary policies, and the inflation. These details might not be asked in your mains exam, but in prelims, the conceptual clarity is very important. Then the international relations. For that, I will say, for the sake of updating yourself, refer to newspapers and the daily current affairs material which is available in all the websites, and be thorough with the bilateral and multilateral and regional forums which are mentioned in the syllabus. And there are other parts of the syllabus also which are in GS3 and GS1 too, for example, social issues and social justice. So in that, I will discuss them with the help of some previous year's question papers, and also when I will be touching the GS1, 2, 3, 4. So next point that is important in my mind is how much time does it take to start the preparation and complete it. So for instance, prelims to me, it is about 2 to 3 months, depends on your maturity in the prelims preparation stage. And second is the mains. So in mains, it should take 6 to 8 months for the complete coverage of syllabus, apart from the optional subject. I will not be talking about optional right now. And then in mains, how we should begin? We should be preparing our basic material. If there is any foundation course that you are doing, so you should be referring to that, but also start answer writing as soon as possible, because that will give you an exposure of how it is like to utilize the concept that you have read in the real examination simulation scenario. So this is there. Now I will try to take up one question from GS1 which was asked in this year's exam. So we have question number 4. It is from geography. The question is, discuss the geophysical characteristics of the Circum-Pacific zone. So when a question like this comes, Circum-Pacific zone, the question is very particular in that it is asking about the characteristics. What we should do is try to remember when we were reading the syllabus in our earthquake area, there it was mentioned. So it is earthquake prone. And why it is that? Because it is the convergent oceanic and the continental boundary. This is the cause of it. What is specific about this? Because whenever we have earthquake prone areas, there are boundaries which are either diverging or converging. We have nutrient enrichment. So there is a good fish stock, thriving marine life, and also it is helpful to the regional economies. So all of these things should be mentioned. So we will be touching the human aspect, we will be touching the geographical aspect, and then we will also be touching the economical aspect when we will be addressing this question. So we will begin by highlighting um, the territorial areas of the circum-Pacific zone, or why it is called circum-Pacific zone. Then we should in this question at least draw a diagram where we will be depicting where are this circum-Pacific zone covering the whole circum-Pacific belt and excluding the Australia, and then we should be discussing about the characteristics. And we can end by highlighting the importance of polymetallic nodules which are present in these areas, or maybe the methane hydrates which are present in these areas. So that will give a positive outlook to your answer. Second question is about the process of desertification, and it does not have climatic boundaries. Justify with examples. So question is very clear. We have, the line is given, the desertification does not have the climatic boundaries. And this we already know because we have been listening to how there is a green wall concept going on in Africa to prevent the Saharan sand coming onto the southern green and lush areas of Africa. We are also listening to the issues of how the Thar deserts and its sand is coming to the central highlands of our country. So we know this concept, but we will be explaining this with the help of these examples. And before this process of desertification itself can be explained, we can use United Nations UNCCD. So it is talking about land degradation, neutrality. This is the concept. There was one summit which has happened in India, in our country this year. There are sustainable development goals about the life on land, which touches on this aspect and how it will be affecting the biodiversity, the environment, the people. So try to diversify your answer in as many ways as possible while addressing the core demand of the question. So this was about GS1. Now I will see what we can discuss in GS2. So question number 3 in GS2 is, how far do you think cooperation, competition and confrontation have shaped the nature of federation in India? Cite some recent examples to validate your answer. So we are a quasi-federal country. We have a strong union, and states, the legislative and executive powers are divided based on the Schedule 7. So we know that there are these three dynamics going on between the union and the states. Cooperation. How do we see cooperation? For example, the interlinking of rivers. When we talk about interstate council under Article 263 of our constitution, and there are so many committees, Niti Aayog, which is working on the cooperative federalism concept and the bottom-up development agenda. These things can be mentioned because the question says, cite some recent examples. Then comes the competition. We have issues between states with respect to allocation of resources. We have special state-related packages being demanded by the states from the center. We have also finance commission related issues. And competition is also now seen in a very healthy manner because Niti Aayog and other government institutions are also releasing so many indexes of health, education and good governance, where we see how states are competing with each other, and also in the sanitation and the Swachhata drive. Then is the confrontation, which is conflictual federalism, to put a word to it, that we have interstate water disputes. We have when there was migrant exodus at the time of pandemic, so there was issue between the states related to that also. There is issue towards the threat of the job security of the residents of a particular state, and that's why we are seeing a lot of states coming up with policies providing reservation in the jobs to the local people. All these examples are in one way or the other an aspect of the federalism itself, and we can mention it like this. There are so many constitutional experts who have talked about India's federalism. We can mention how it is not like US, which is a United States of America and a complete federation in its one of the purest forms. India is not like that, and why it is like that, we can mention some Supreme Court judgments that they have said that it is because of our core ground realities that we have a strong union to prevent the centrifugal forces like secessionism, separatism, extremism, which are working in our country, so that the political idea of a Union of India stays intact. So this can be done. Then we have this question number 18 in GS2 paper, that National Education Policy 2020 is in conformity with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. Goal 4 is about lifelong learning and education to all. It intends to restructure and reorient the education system in India. Critically examine the statement. So National Education Policy, question is like this. National Education Policy in conformity with Sustainable Development Goal 4. Why we are talking about education in this way? This question was one of the expected ones because we just had draft National Education Policy released in 2019. In this question, we can do so many things because new education policy touches the school level education, college level education, and the early childhood care and education, and then also the extracurricular and the curricular, and how the hard separations will go away. There will be no more silos. There will be student empowerment by flexibility of choices. Now we will not be having homogeneous class structure where all the students are more or less of the same age group, but a class which is heterogeneous. There would be some people who have gone after first year of the class and went on to establish their startup. Some may succeed, some may fail. They came back and now they have other students with them. So it will be an environment where interdisciplinary and cross learning things will happen. And SDG 4, it talks about lifelong learning. So these all aspects at different levels of education can be mentioned. You may cite one of the quotations, for example, former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She has said that education is a democratizing force. It is an equalizer that cuts across all the classes, caste and religion, etc. So these things can be mentioned. Ultimately, in our country, we have around 74% of literacy rate, and we need to reach the level of 100% in gross enrollment ratio, which is mentioned in the NEP. So conclusion can be given in this manner. So you have explained all the whole of the question, and yet you are being very positive at the end of the question that why we want these things to happen in the first place. Now I'll be moving to the GS part 3. Okay, I don't have GS3 here, so I will go to GS4. I'm hoping my approach is connecting with you. So in GS4 we have question about emotional intelligence. It is straightforward from the syllabus. The question 2B, it is what are the main components of emotional intelligence and can they be learned? Of course they can be learned. Emotional intelligence is about self-awareness, about our own emotions. Then self-regulation, how do we regulate those emotions? If I am angry, should I show my anger? If I am happy, should I be overexcited with happiness? So how I regulate it? And then others' emotions, perceiving them, being conversant with them, and how we regulate that. And social skills and empathy, because empathy is about putting ourselves in others' shoes. So all this is important. And these are all the aspects of emotional intelligence which I am sure you would have read as part of your basic ethics preparation. And can they be learned? How can we teach them? So you can again use the help of new education policy here. You can use the help of, for example, there are civil servants who in their own conduct during the training are taught so many things. And there was one case of an IPS officer in Bangalore who sang the national anthem to allay a very agitating crowd. So it is because of his emotional intelligence that he was able to do that. There's so many things, so many examples can be conveyed. In ethics, what I have found as a way of my own application and finding its positive result is that sometimes questions are philosophical in nature. you might not be able to see from which part of the syllabus they are coming. So they are very abstract. So we need to take them out of their abstractness. We need to populate them with the help of relevant examples from our life. For example, in the ethics paper, there is again, let me go through the question. Right. Hatred is destructive of a person's wisdom and conscience that can poison a nation's spirit. Do you agree with this view? And justify your answer. When it says justify your answer, this directive means that you have to propound on those lines of the question itself. Contrary opinion is not needed, but nevertheless, in the conclusion or just before the conclusion, you give the other point of view also that will add value to your answer. So hatred is destructive of a person's wisdom and conscience. First of all, what is wisdom? Wisdom is not just that we know something. It is the ability to understand that we don't know many things than we know. And hatred is destructive of it. What does hatred do up to a person? Hatred makes us blind to other person's characteristics, to some institutions' positive things. We become blind and we become irrational in nature. So hatred should be and always be discarded. It should always be discouraged. And how this is linked with the concept of conscience, and that can poison a nation's spirit. So when we move to this part of the question, it is talking about these four forces: the secessionism, the communalism, linguistic chauvinism, regionalism, all these social issues that you know. Why we have these issues? In fact, we can talk about gender disparity and the crimes also. It is because of the hatred. And hatred towards what? Hatred towards somebody who is not you, somebody who is different. So if you are from one part of the country, another person is from another part of the country. If you belong to one caste, religion, creed, race, somebody who does not belong to these and the other. So hatred of the other has to go away because it will poison the nation's spirit. Now start giving the examples. You can give the example of the communalism related issues that we are well aware. Then the linguistic chauvinism related issues, for example 1965 anti-Hindi riots. Then the regionalism, so many the Naxalism related problems, Northeast insurgency, and the Punjab issue during the 1980s was there. And the xenophobia, if we talk about the world stage, so many immigration has been going on. Jewish Holocaust can be mentioned. There have been so many genocides, including the Cambodian one, Rwanda massacre. So these are your examples. So when it comes to ethics paper, questions may seem a little far-fetched, but if you look into the core of it and relate from which part of the syllabus it is being asked, you have sufficient examples from your GS paper. We can use these examples here. So justify the question, which was the question itself. Now I will be touching upon one case study. So this year's case studies have been really long and lengthy, but that does not mean that they were difficult. Okay, difficult or easy is a relative term. It entirely depends on how you perceive them. So one lesson is also there, that always embrace the uncertainty of the exam. When the result is announced at that day also, and when you see the question paper that day also, it can be anything. So we have the first case study 7, where there is one person who is a senior public servant, a very honest and forthright person, posted in finance ministry, head of the budget division, and busy in organizing the budgetary support for the 4 states. Some of them are going to polls, so it becomes politically sensitive issue. And this year's annual budget had allocated 8,300 crores for national housing scheme. So I will in short tell you about this case study. What is happening is that there is one welfare scheme. National Housing Scheme. Budget was for this scheme. But there is conflict here in this case study. We have developmental program also. One is SEZ, where allocation is needed, otherwise it will lead to cost overruns. Then another one is, let me see. Yes, the MNC one, where bidding had happened. Yes. So these two projects, it is for the energy security. Yes, energy security. And it is in the state which are going to elections. Now there is one senior also. So the name of the person is Mr. Rajesh. He has problems in his mind, ethical dilemmas in his mind because of all these issues. The question is very simple. So it is asking what are the ethical issues involved in reappropriation of funds from a welfare to a developmental project. So this project had all the funds. It had all the funds. Now some of it needs to go to these places. So what will be the ethical issues? For instance, you remember what happens when we talk about the Bharatmala project, Sagarmala project, when the Statue of Unity was being constructed, and the bullet train project. What is the common argument? It is that rather than providing for the poverty alleviation scheme and preventing the starvation related issues in our country, we are spending so much money in these big infrastructure projects. We don't know who will be benefited from them. But imagine, you are aspiring for civil service. Welfare, India is a welfare state, but India also needs a lot of development. India needs energy security. India needs infrastructure, because infrastructure will ensure the virtuous cycle. So these all things should be clear in your mind. So we need these two, and that is the reason there is an ethical dilemma. Should we favor the development, infrastructure, road, energy, or should we favor the basic right of an individual in a welfare state, that is of housing? It comes within the directive principles of a state policy. So what we will do, in the first part of the question, we will elaborate on all these dilemmas which I have just talked about. In the second part, question is asking, given the need for proper utilization of public funds, discuss the options available to Rajesh Kumar. Now, what are the options available to Rajesh Kumar? Either go with this National Housing Scheme or go with SEZ or the MNC Energy Security one. We will discuss all these options, and then we will talk about the merits and the demerits. In the merits, we know what are the merits, and demerits also, they are quite intuitive in nature. I will not be going into that. So I will say, is resigning a worthy option? Well, I will say, being a civil servant, complication in work profile and these dilemmas, to my mind, are very common in nature, and that is why maybe the question has been there in the mains exam also. What we should do is, what I did was, I suggested some innovative and creative approach about solving this fund crisis. Basically, it is a fund crisis. So we can go for various models of mobilizing the financial resources. In fact, during the pandemic, you would have seen government relaxing the norms for the states borrowing based on 4 criteria, that if they are going for one nation, one ration tax, if they are going for reforms in the distribution companies or in the urban local bodies, then their limit of borrowing was extended. So it was an innovative way. Similarly, we can also suggest mobilizing financial resources. This can be done through 1, special purpose vehicle. 2nd, viability gap funding. 3rd, using the CSR funds. 4th, building alliances for the finances with the IMF, World Bank and other like-minded countries. For instance, in bullet train. So the argument in support of bullet train, very analytically saying, is that more than 80% money is coming from Japan, at an interest rate which is very low and over a period of time which is quite long. So we can go to like-minded countries which are our friends and raise the financial resources. So that will bring Mr. Rajesh out of this dilemma. So ethical dilemmas mentioning is important, but suggesting creative solutions is even more important. And you can conclude this answer by talking about the DPSPs, talking about the fundamental duties, maybe the preamble of our constitution. So all these things I believe will be a little helpful to you. I have not discussed about GS3, but basic approach is the same. Introduce it with relevant fact, statistics or something, some example that you see is befitting in that answer. Proceed with addressing the core of the question. Draw diagrams which are relevant. If they are not relevant, do not draw them. Use proper and correct statistics, and if possible, mention the source of that statistic also, because otherwise it gets difficult. And today everybody has smartphones. They can immediately check in the Google, in the internet, that the data the student has written, is it right or wrong. So that fact should be kept in mind. And finally, in addressing the body of the question also, use the advantage, disadvantage, merit, demerit, and break the question into as many parts as possible. It helps the examiner in cognizing that you have understood the question, that you know the answer in all its manifestations. And then conclude the answer on a positive note, maybe mention some scheme of the government or our constitutional ideals, or maybe sustainable development goals, some United Nations committee, national committee. All these are various in different ways answer writing style portfolios that you can adopt for a better answer writing. And apart from this, I will say, basic characteristics which are needed in answer writing is cohesiveness, preciseness, exactness, and orientation of the answer. If question is asking something, your answer should be oriented in that manner only. Same poverty issue can be asked in GS2, can be asked in GS1 and in GS3, but answer will vary because syllabus is different in all these 3 GS papers. Besides this, overall I will say it is a long journey. Have faith in yourself, surround yourself in a positive, energizing ecosystem. Seek mentorship from wherever you rely upon, and work hard, and you will definitely achieve your dream career, civil service career. My best wishes to you. Thank you.